All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We are doing a startup mock draft today. Got a couple of new guests with me. My good buddies Steve and Kyle, a couple guys that I played hockey with a lot in college. They've been playing Dynasty with me for many years. So once again, if you are new to this channel, please follow along on Twitter. Please subscribe. I am a fairly new channel, so just trying to get this going. Do a lot of episodes live on YouTube and tweet pretty constantly. It's all Dynasty content. But without further ado, I will go ahead and just kick us off. So this is a 12 round, not a 12 round, excuse me, 12 team, half PPR, super flex, tight end premium mock draft. We got Kyle at the 3 spot, myself at the 7, and Steve at the 11. And just going to make it pretty easy, and we'll go ahead and start us up. So first 2 picks, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I think those are 2 that you'll most likely see at the top of your draft. I posted a reel recently and tweeted about where do people think Jaden Daniels is going to go? Is he the 101? He seems to be a little overhyped after that first year. Maybe, maybe not. But Kyle, what are you thinking? You were on the clock here at 103.
Do that because it's a super flex and the rushing upside of Daniels over someone like Joe Burrow. And then the age factor compared to Hurts. I think you have to go Daniels here. I think it's a clear top 3 with the rushing upside, the passing touchdowns, and the talent around them. And because it's a super flex, you need those QBs early because you got to have 2 of them. And the QBs that score 25 points a week are such a big advantage. And rolling the dice with your non-running 15-point quarterbacks. So I think I'm going to take Daniels here.
Would either of you guys consider Daniels in the top 2 picks over Allen or Jackson? Steve?
I would consider him over Lamar, honestly. I think Josh Allen, with just the way that offense is set up, they run everything through him. I think he is worthy of the top 2. I'd take him 101 more often than not. But I think Jaden Daniels could definitely be taken over Lamar. I mean, they're very similar players. I like the Commanders' receiving core a little bit better. I think they got some good up-and-coming players. So I think I'd go with Jaden Daniels over Lamar, but you can't really go wrong with those 3.
Kyle, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Allen, I think, has been very consistently 1 or 2 for the last 5 years. Lamar did have a down year, and I think he has more injury risk than Allen. I don't know. Daniels did. I think he had an injury at Arizona State. But in the NFL, he was pretty clean last year. But I think Allen, if I had to go 101, I would take Allen. And then I think Lamar and Daniels is personal preference.
Yeah, I think that was the conversation that we were having on my last stream. We all agreed the same thing, that Josh Allen's kind of the clear 101. But after that, if you want to go Daniels, Jackson, even throw in Jamar Chase, I don't think anybody would blame you. Superflex draft, you're most likely going to lean those quarterbacks. And between Daniels and Jackson, they have very similar play styles. I would personally lean Jackson. I still think he's got a few years left, a few solid years left of being a mobile quarterback and having that rushing upside. And I'm a little nervous about investing in a player who we've only seen for 1 year. Even though Daniels has that potential and you're investing in the age, I would love to see it for another at least 1 or 2 more years before I invest a top 3 startup draft pick, where I just feel like Jackson, he is a lot safer. He's probably not going to throw for 40 touchdowns like he did last year, but once again, it's more likely that I would think that Jackson finishes in the top 5 than Daniels. So I think the idea of Daniels over Jackson is definitely that age gap. But once again, really just comes down to personal preference. I do agree that those are definitely the top 3 picks. Teams 4, 5, and 6, we go Jamar Chase, Jalen Hurts, and Joe Burrow. I think this is pretty chalk. These 5 quarterbacks and Jamar Chase is really, after this, where you hit a tier break. Really not liking this pick at 107 to start off. Do you go Justin Jefferson, Patrick Mahomes? Brock Bowers would be a nasty pick, probably not somewhere that I'm leaning. That tight end in the first round of a startup. You could go running back. I'm a little bit nervous to invest in a running back this early on, so it's really between Mahomes and Jefferson for me. I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to go Patrick Mahomes, lock up the last quarterback I have here in this tier. Just once again, it's a very safe pick. He hasn't been the guy that we knew that he once was, but he's still very safe, still very solid. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. I think last year was his worst fantasy finish that he's had so far. Teams 8, 9, and 10 go Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, and Brock Bowers goes 110. So that makes it maybe a little bit easier for you, Steve. You don't have to think about taking Bowers in the first round. But what are you thinking here at the turn at pick 11? You got 2 of the next 4 picks coming up.
Yeah, I really would have liked to have a quarterback still there that I think is on that top end. I mean, Mahomes is that tier break with the quarterbacks. I wouldn't reach for, Herbert or Caleb or anyone like that in the first round. So I think with his usage last year and just pretty much how much of a cheat code he is, I think I have to go Gibbs. I know Ben Johnson's gone. David Montgomery's not getting any younger. That offense is going to check down a lot to Gibbs. He's a big play waiting to happen every single time he has the ball in his hands. Half PPR, I think Gibbs running back there over the edge.
No, I think that's a safe pick. Gibbs and Bijan are really going to tier their own. You can put Genty in there, but I'm not investing a rookie once again this early. What are you thinking here now coming back on the clock? St. Brown and Genty went the 112 and 201. So your best available. You got a bunch of wide receivers, Neighbors, CD, Puka, Brian Thomas. So then you start to get into those next tier of quarterbacks, Herbert, Williams, Drake May, guys like that.
Yeah, honestly, with this pick, I'd be looking to trade back if this was, a real league. I think any of these guys they're kind of in the same tier. All these wide receivers, Neighbors, Lamb, Nacua, BTJ. I think they're obviously. I think Neighbors and Lamb are still a little bit above them, but it's a close tier. I think I'd go with Neighbors. I think they're just gonna pepper him with targets this year. I think he's a big shot waiting to happen, just like Gibbs is. So I take the upside with Neighbors.
Kyle, do you agree? What do you think about that? Him going Gibbs, Neighbors here at the turn.
Well, as a Giants fan, I'm a little biased here, but Neighbors, I think the youth over CD and Puka. Puka also has the injury issues that have been cropping up the last few seasons, which are big risk. Because I think he missed games this year and he missed games last year. Neighbors missed, I think, 1 game this season and was pretty
looks
healthy.
Like 2 in the middle.
Two in the middle.
Yeah.
I think the way Puka plays, the problem is Stafford just absolutely peppers Puka with targets as well. So it's a really tough call because all 3 are just alpha wide receiver ones. Lamb's on his 2nd contract already, so I think that would make me lean away from him. And then Brian Thomas in that tier. The problem with him is we haven't seen him play with Hunter yet, so we don't know how that target share is going to be. And there's really, I think you have to go one of those 4 wide receivers there if you don't trade back, because I think they're all above the trustworthiness of the quarterbacks, and there's really no running back you're going to take this high other than Gibbs, Genty, and Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, Neighbors missed a couple games in the year. I think it was due to a concussion. Nacua has the soft tissue injuries, which you never like to see. They always come back up. It's injuries that they'll deal with every season. And then CD, I mean, adding Pickens to that offense, I don't think it's going to hurt Lamb too much, but Neighbors has little to no competition, really, in my mind. He could get 170 targets this year pretty easily.
Yeah, I think I agree with those picks. With Gibbs, I mentioned this before, there is a solid tier break there. I'm not one to invest in running backs early in a dynasty startup, but it's hard to pass up on a guy like Gibbs. And once again, as Kyle mentioned, after he's off the board, if you want to invest in Genty, who's a rookie, or now you're looking at Saquon, who's 28 years old, or these other rookies who are getting boosted up the board, no one that I have a lot of confidence in. And then of those wide receivers, I do think Neighbors is the pick. He's being talked about. Does he have dynasty wide receiver 1 potential as soon as 1 to 2 years from now? Sooner or later, Chase and Jefferson are going to be 28, 29 years old. Neighbors just looks like an absolute stud. He really does look elite. And now that he has a quarterback, you can say, are you confident in Jackson Dart or not? But it's no longer, I don't know, was it Daniel Jones last year? Was it who was I don't even know who was throwing him the ball last year in New York. It was just a bunch of Oak League.
DeVito.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito and he was, and And he was still putting up huge numbers. So Neighbors has the talent and he has the potential. So I think those are two pretty safe picks, and we'll see what you end up having to do on the quarterback next time around. So I'm on the clock at 206. Right after Neighbors went, we had CeeDee Lamb, Puka, and then Caleb Williams at the 205 is kind of that next tier of quarterbacks. You kind of investing in that upside. My best available to pair with Mahomes would be Brian Thomas. Nico Collins and Drake London are going to be the next available wide receivers on the board. Do I want to go two quarterbacks, Herbert, May, Stroud? Probably once again a little early for me to go Trey McBride. What do you guys think about two quarterbacks with your first two picks in a super flex? Do you feel like that's smart if you can get those guys in that tier, or would you rather be waiting? Because I know you got this next tier of guys in round 3 and 4 with Knicks. I mean, I'm probably not a huge Cam Ward fan, but Jordan Love, Kyler Murray. Would you guys, if you felt like, say Caleb Williams was on the clock, would you be investing in two quarterbacks in the first two picks?
I think I would take Caleb. The Bears front office seems to be giving him every ounce of help they can possibly give him. They upgraded the offensive line. They've given him so many targets through the draft. They have 2 tight ends now that were high picks. I'm hesitant on Herbert. I'm hesitant on Stroud. They're more pocket passers. I think unless you're Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, where you're very well proven, I think it's a risk to take him over these established wide receiver ones that are still left on the board. Drake May, I think, is the interesting one after Caleb, because rushing quarterbacks are king in fantasy football. If you think he can stay healthy and you think he can play with the rushing upside, we saw it with flashes last season. I think there's a lot of upside with Drake May.
I agree with that. I think if Caleb was available, I'd still take Caleb over May, but I have no problem taking May here either. I think they've upgraded his offense as well. I mean, Travion Henderson, I think, is going to feast year one. I think he's a player that I'll probably be targeting later in this draft as well, that I could see getting 50, 60 catches this year, especially with his history in college. So I'd be fine taking May here. I like Kyle said, I wouldn't take Stroud or Herbert this high. Herbert, I think, is just capped being in a Harbaugh offense, especially when they just took Hampton in the first round. So Caleb or May, I'm okay with. If those two were gone at this point, I would take the next best wide receiver.
Yeah, it feels like you guys are investing in the potential of those younger quarterbacks who, I just used the word, but have the potential to jump in and be a top 5 or top 6 quarterback this time next year. Does Hurts take a slide? Does Mahomes take a slide? And Williams absolutely was, once again, 1 year ago, was taken above Daniels in a lot of draft. He was taking him above him in the NFL draft. So he absolutely has the skills, and a lot of people are really excited in that Ben Johnson offense. And same thing with Drake May. He showed the potential that if he does break out, could easily be a top 5, top 6 startup pick this time next year. A little nervous about the weapons in New England overall. I like Travion Henderson, but what does Stephon Diggs have left in the tank? Kyle Williams was a really fun pick that I've been targeting a lot in rookie drafts. So you're definitely shooting for the upside. But with me being on the clock, I think I'm going to play it safe. This is most likely what I would do. I would lean wide receiver over running back. Got a couple guys I'm eyeing here that I'm maybe hoping fall to me at the 306. Because this is a third round reversal, so we're actually going to come back to Steve here at the beginning of the third. I'm going to go ahead and play it safe. Brian Thomas Jr. and Nico Collins would be my picks. Let me look at the age. Nico Collins being 26 and Brian Thomas Jr. being 22. I'll go Brian Thomas Jr. for that 4-year age gap. Once again, I think they're very similar players. I wasn't completely sold on Brian Thomas's rookie year, although he had some really bad quarterbacks throwing him the ball and he still broke out, so the talent's definitely there. What does that look like in year 2 with the new head coach and Travis Hunter coming in to compete for targets? After Brian Thomas, we go Trey McBride at 207, Saquon Barkley at 208. Team 4, Nico Collins. They have Chase and Collins. You have to take a quarterback. Kyle, you are on the clock here at 210. And once again, just reminding you, this is a third round reversal. So after this pick, you won't be back on the clock for another 12 picks. What's going through your head here at the 210?
Well, I guess the comment, if Saquon was there for me, I still wouldn't take him. I think the way I've approached dynasty leagues is I don't want to touch running backs unless they're like first or second year players until you're absolutely ready to win, because you can trade for older running backs in dynasty leagues. It's very difficult to trade for quarterbacks, and wide receiver ones are even more difficult to trade for. So based on that information, I already have Jaden Daniels, and there are a good amount of decent tier 2 quarterbacks, Purdy, Kyler Murray. Trevor Lawrence is another guy that I'm very interested in later with the way they've upgraded the weapons around him. And I think I'm looking at Drake London here. His target share was really high last year. He was getting touchdowns, other than Mooney and I guess Kyle Pitts, if you still believe in him. There's not really anything there other than Bijan. So I think I'm going to take Drake London here.
The one rule of fantasy is you're not allowed to stop believing in Kyle Pitts. So I think everybody is hyped on him for next year. But I think that's the right pick. There is a bit of a tier break after that. If you believe in Travis Hunter, we got some second year players like Marvin Harrison, Ladd, Garrett Wilson. But I do think London is kind of that next tier. Right after Drake London, Travis Hunter went 211. Amarian Hampton goes 212. CJ Stroud goes 301. That team's first quarterback. Steve, you're on the clock at 302 with this third round reversal. You took Gibbs in the first, Neighbors in the second. What are your thoughts on that London pick from Kyle, and then what's going through your head here at 302?
I definitely like the London pick. I think you could argue that London could go before Nico. I think, again, given the soft tissue injuries that Nico Collins has dealt with, he missed a large chunk of last year, and that offense paid for it. They also drafted 2 wide receivers in rounds 2 and 3, so he definitely has more competition. They brought in Christian Kirk, who I think could be a sneaky good player. I know he's up there in age and has some injury concerns of his own, but placing him in the slot, I think will definitely take some targets away from Collins. So I'm good with taking London there. I wouldn't take Hunter this high. I don't think I'd take Hunter even if he was at this pick, especially with me needing a quarterback. I'm going to go with what I said at your pick when we were talking about quarterbacks, and I'm going to go with May for the upside with not only his legs, but the age factor as well, and that offense.
Now, it makes sense. You want to get one of those top-tier quarterbacks, especially in a super flex draft. You wouldn't be surprised if teams start to take the second quarterback off the board. We just saw Herbert go immediately after you at 303, and you start to hit a tier break where, once it does get back to you at 411, you're really going to be, looking at a lot of quarterback twos. So being able to take a guy that I think you can feel a lot of confidence in being a quarterback one makes a lot of sense. And Kyle, you were just saying before that you like the Drake May pick, kind of comparing him to Caleb Williams, who went about 12 picks before him, kind of a young guy with a lot of potential. Right after Drake May, we had Herbert go 303, Ladd McConkey go 304, and Devon Achane go 305. This makes the pick really easy for me. If you guys have been listening to this draft, Kyle and Steve, you guys know who I'm targeting. This guy at the top of the board. Not even going to think twice about it. As an Arizona Cardinals fan, Marvin Harrison in the middle of the third is just too easy. That is just chalk for me. I think he has the potential to be a better wide receiver than even Brian Thomas Jr., but the value's there to wait and get him in the middle of the third. Would have maybe considered another quarterback here. I like the Bo Nix pick. It looks like Team 4 did the right thing in getting their quarterback with only taking 2 wide receivers. But I do think, once again, there is another tier break here with the wide receivers, and I certainly have Marvin Harrison in that upper echelon. And after Harrison, we went JSN at 307, Laporta at 308. That feels a little early for Sam Laporta, but it is a tight end premium league, so I won't judge the CPU for taking him there, although he is a little bit needy at wide receiver. Bo Nix goes 309. Kyle, you're back on the clock at 310. You took Daniels at 103. London at 210. What do you think about these last couple picks? What do you think about Steve's pick of Drake May, my own pick of Marvin Harrison, and how these last, 12 picks have gone?
I love Drake May sneaking the saps there at 3.2 is crazy. I think that's a great steal. Like I said, I think he could be where Daniels is in a year from now if he plays up to his potential. And I don't think he's going to bust out super quickly. So you'll at least have a few years where he's going to provide you some value. So I don't think there's a super amount of risk there. I think Achan is the interesting pick there. What do you guys think about him?
I'm a little hesitant to have him in that upper echelon, but I think you're starting to get to a point of running backs where there's really nobody else. It depends on how you believe in Breece Hall or Bucky Irving. So he does kind of seem to be the next man up, but there is I feel like a significant tier break here. I feel like the top 5 or 6 running backs, there's multiple tiers. I mean, after Gibbs, probably after, Barkley, I would say there's another tier, probably have Achan and Hampton in a similar tier, but I'm a little hesitant to invest in a smaller running back with some injury history that early, but he's got the upside potential. I've seen some people rank him as being the RB1 going into this year and having an RB1 type of potential, but he just seems very risky. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's risky at that cost. I mean, I definitely like him. When Tua is healthy, I think he was the number 1 running back in fantasy when Tua was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a target machine. He's essentially a wide receiver that could get another 700, 800 yards rushing. I like that they took Ollie Gordon in the draft. I actually think that helps Achan. They get their power runner to kind of replace what Mostert brought to them 2 years ago. At cost, I don't like Achan there, only because I feel like he is pretty dependent on the QB play because of those targets. And as you mentioned, he is a bit smaller, has the injury history, had some shoulder issues last year, which you never like to see. So at cost, don't like him there. But if he was there in the early 4th round, later 4th round, when I get back up, I probably would have taken him there.
Yeah, I think for value, once again, if Achan were to fall even to me in the middle of the 4th, it'd be hard to pass up. But with some of these other guys on the board, I'm more likely to invest in a wide receiver or even a quarterback in a super flex draft. That's just where my head's at. I'm definitely a little bit more hesitant to take a running back early, but I don't blame somebody kind of swinging for the fences with that pick. So Kyle, you're on the clock at 3:10. What are you thinking here?
So, knowing that I have 2 picks now, but then I'm not going to pick for 20-something picks.
No, you're on at 403. That's the thing. So the third.
2 picks.
Oh, 2 picks. Yep, that's right.
I have a big gap. So I think I'm going to take a quarterback with one of these 2 picks, just so I have one of the upper end QB2 guys.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's still a bunch of them on the board. I think I can wait those 4 picks. So then, again, I've said this before, but I'm hesitant to take running backs early just because of the injuries and the ability to get replaced very quickly in the NFL. So that makes me look at, I think there's 3 wide receivers that I'd like at this pick. And it would be Garrett Wilson, Ted McMillan, and then Rashee Rice. I think those are the 3 that I'd be looking at. A.J. Brown is 27, 28 now. Devonta Smith's there. And Hurts steals a lot of touchdowns. And that's a big problem for anyone in that offense. Garrett's got Fields. He hasn't had as many good wide receiver finishes as you'd think, Garrett Wilson, in his career. I feel like he's more of a mid wide receiver 2. The question to me is, do you want the upside of Ted McMillan as a rookie? I think Bryce Young showed some flashes last year. Or do you want to take the gamble on Rashee Rice, where is he going to be healthy coming back from the surgery? Is the suspensions concern for you? But I think the upside is the highest with him of the 3. That being said, I'm going to go Ted McMillan.
Okay.
I think the age factor and the safety of being the number 1 target in that offense is pretty big to me. Yeah,
I think you brought up a bunch of really good points. I mean, I just pulled up Garrett Wilson's stats. He had two not so great first 2 years. He was outside the top 20. Last year he finished as a wide receiver 10, but he does feel very much in that wide receiver 15 to 18 range. Doesn't really feel confident that he's a top 12 wide receiver. There's just a lot of other talent on the board, and you got a lot of rookies that are coming in and a lot of people competing for targets. I mean, even this last draft class, I think there's 4 or 5 guys from last year's draft class who have now been taken before him: Harrison, Ladd, Brian Thomas Jr., and Neighbors. So it's going to be really tough to kind of emerge, and taking the, once again, kind of that risky, I wouldn't even call it risky, but the potential of Ted McMillan. Although we haven't seen anything, he's going to clearly be the alpha in Carolina. I'm pretty sure that'll be a pass happy offense. They're certainly going to be playing from behind. And then Rashee Rice got the injury history. I think he's going to play this year because of the suspension, but I didn't like what I saw. I don't, a guy who's racing his car in the middle of the day and getting into car accidents. It's not somebody I necessarily want on my team, although I'm not an NFL GM. I'm just playing fantasy, but it makes me a little bit nervous about the guy's future. So I think those are definitely the 3 guys that makes a lot of sense, especially if your team is built to, you want the balance of young and old. And we've been bringing, you brought up the AJ Brown pick, and he's really been a hot topic of discussion this offseason of what do you do with a guy who's probably only got 1 or 2 more years of alpha level productivity. So no, you hit on all the points. I think you worked through it. I might lean Wilson. Maybe. It's really tough, honestly, if I was on the clock. So, Steve, what do you think here? Then Kyle, I'll pass it back to you because you're back on the clock at 4:03.
I like the Tet pick. I think that's what I would go with in the same position. He's an alpha number 1, top 10 draft capital. He has a huge catch radius, which for a shorter quarterback is a big difference. If you look at smaller quarterbacks in the course of history, I mean, Russell Wilson had his best years also with DK Metcalf. Drew Brees had his best years with Michael Thomas. These big 6'4", 6'5" receivers are really important for those smaller quarterbacks. You could throw it up there and he's got a 50-50 chance to catch it every single time. I mean, I like the Tet pick. I don't think Leggett is going to be much of a target muncher from him. I don't think Thielen has much left in his gas tank either. Coker could be a guy, sneaky guy that could be that number 2 wide receiver on that team, but I would definitely like the huge top 8 draft capital wide receiver there.
Makes a lot of sense. You guys are saying everything that I'm thinking. So Kyle, yeah, you're back on the clock at 4:03. You made the comment last round that you were going to pass on the quarterback at 3:10. Probably take one here at 4:03 because it's going to be a while until you're on the clock again. So what are you thinking?
So I think, again, this is a prime trade back spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go to the end of the round, let some of these quarterbacks come off the board. Because are you really going to take the risk on Cam Ward? I'm probably not. I think he's more of a pocket passer as well. He's not as big of a running guy. So you got Jordan Love, another pocket passer. So then I think you're looking at Kyler Murray, a Brock Purdy, maybe a Trevor Lawrence, who I feel like they're sort of reaches at this level. But again, there's not as many wide receivers. So I think this next tier is going to be mostly your slightly older running backs that are still running back 1s now, and then your riskier QB1, QB2 fringe guys. So you're kind of debating on that tier. Kyler Murray interests me here. I know you, as a Cardinals fan, what do you think about Kyler Murray at this pick?
I like him. I think it's a great value. I'd certainly be looking at him at 407 to stack with Marvin Harrison. But you brought up a good point with the quarterbacks that are available. They're all in a very similar tier. I mean, Brock Purdy just got the extension. I could argue he's the best quarterback available on an offense that's going to win 11 or 12 games and put up a lot of points. Baker Mayfield has had if I look here, he just had a top 5 quarterback finish. A lot of people are having him in the top 6, 7, kind of that next tier of quarterbacks, especially in redraft leagues. Trevor Lawrence with the Liam Cohen offense, bringing in Travis Hunter as just an extra weapon, or the possibility of him taking that next step. So I think you brought up a lot of good names. I wouldn't have Cam Ward as high. I'd also probably put Jordan Love down a little bit lower, but then I think those next 4 Murray, Purdy, Mayfield, Lawrence. I'd be happy with any of those. So once again, as you guys are saying, if you can trade back till the middle or the end of the fourth, get a better pick later in the startup, get a future second by moving back, 6-7 spots. Makes a lot of sense here. But I think if no one's willing to trade back, you just kind of got to take your guy. I mean, Murray has that rushing upside, but people have kind of just been waiting for him to take the next step. So it's really just, once again, what do you believe in?
I think you make a good point about Purdy, and I think that's who I'm going to go with here.
Mm-hmm.
He has sneaky rushing upside, and that offense with Kyle Shanahan, it's always going to be good. And they have some younger guys at Pearsall in that offense. And it's Kyle Shanahan. You got to trust the offense, and you got to trust the rushing upside from Purdy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would probably have Purdy slightly above those group of guys, once again, just because the new contract, because of that offense, they're always scoring points. They're always just kind of churning these new guys in, and it doesn't matter who Kyle Shanahan has on the field. He's able to produce. After Purdy at 403, actually, I don't know if I spoke out loud with the picks at the corner. So Kyle went Tet at 310. We had Wilson, Rice, Henderson, and Bucky Irving around the corner. He came back with Purdy at 403. A.J. Brown goes at 404. Team 4 really stacking up the basically the older wide receivers, really a produce now or a win now team. He's really going to need that second quarterback and start to get these running backs here soon. Team 5 is yet to take a wide receiver. They took Kyron Williams at 405. Quinshon Judkins goes 406, and I'm on the clock at 407. Kyler Murray feels like the pick where kind of just locking up that QB2 position. Once again, the upside of a quarterback who you might be buying low right now. I think there is an option or an opportunity to be buying Kyler Murray this offseason. I mean, just a year ago, he was considered absolutely a top 10 dynasty quarterback. I would think that he is even this offseason. But right now, if I count, he would be the quarterback 13 off the board, which seems like really great value. And then the other guy that I'm looking at is Breece Hall. I think it's time you can start looking at those running backs. I'm a little surprised that some of these other guys went above Breece, Bucky, Kyron, even the rookies and Henderson and Judkins. I think Breece is another buy low and another guy that could take the next step. There was a conversation in a stream that I had just recently about Bucky versus Breece and what's the value there. And it really seems like Bucky's kind of at this high point where Breece is really at this low point. So I wouldn't argue one way or the other. I'm just going to keep this draft moving along. I'm going to take my guy. It's really hard to pass up. When you're playing Dynasty, you really want the guys that play for the team that you root for. So having the Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison stack would just be a lot of fun, and I think a lot of really good value there, again, the 3-4. And then right after Murray, we see Jonathan Taylor go at 408, Baker at 409. There's Breece Hall at 410. So here in round 4, we have 6 running backs, where in the first 3 rounds, we had 6 running backs. So kind of that next tier break and them all going off the board. Steve, you're on the clock here at 411. You got 2 of the next 4 picks. What do you think of our Purdy and Murray pick, and what are you thinking here at 411?
I like the Purdy and Murray picks. I like Kyler's rushing upside. Like you said, I think he is a sneaky guy that could finish top 10, top 8 this year. Another full year with Marvin Harrison to build that rapport, I think is going to go a long way. Obviously, Trey McBride just got paid. He's going to be happy. With my pick here, this is another prime trade back spot, in my opinion. I mean, there's a ton of quarterbacks that are all in this same tier. I mean, I have a hard time justifying taking Cam Ward here. Mm-hmm. I think you could argue Jordan Love, especially being the fact that he'd be QB 14, 15, whatever it is at this point. That's pretty crazy in my opinion too. Same thing with T-Law. I think he has a big bounce back year. I don't really like T. Higgins here. I don't like the injury history. He is a little bit older. I know he just got paid. He's in a huge explosive offense, but with my team makeup now with Gibbs, Neighbors, May, it doesn't really fit what I'm going for with the youth and upside. I think this is tough. This is a tough spot.
Do you
I
start
think
to
I think
consider a tight end here? I mean, in a tight end premium league, like would you consider any of the rookie tight ends or even TJ Hawkinson, or is that still a bit early?
it's a bit early for TJ Hawkinson. I do think in like this year, I could see him finishing as a top 5 tight end if he's fully healthy. But he has the age factor. He has essentially a rookie quarterback in JJ McCarthy that we don't know what we're getting.
Hmm.
We know KOC is a great coach. They still have JJ and Addison taking targets away from him. If I had Caleb, I might reach for Loveland here for the stack. Um, I don't love Warren in the offense with a question mark at quarterback with either Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson. I think I go for what I think could be the most upside. So I'm going to take Jordan Love here. He's my QB2. I think the value is pretty good here at the end of the 4th round. Like I said, I think it's QB 15 or 16. I think that's great value. I think he played most of last season hurt to an extent. Adding Matthew Golden in the 1st round, I go with the most upside there with Jordan Love.
Yeah, you really talked it out and hit on all the points. I mean, I was looking at T. Higgins, and he really is the prototypical wide receiver 2. He never had a finish above wide receiver 17, although I think a lot of people were really hyped at his season last year. He had over 100 targets, over 10, or he had 10 touchdowns, but he still feels very capped in that offense as long as he's playing behind Jamar Chase. So I think going ahead and locking up your QB2 at that position just makes a lot of sense. Kyle, what do you think?
I think especially because you have one of the more risky quarterback ones that have been taken relative. I think getting a more established, safe quarterback to pair with Drake May makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah,
again, none of the other players on the board that aren't quarterbacks are that encouraging to you, in my opinion.
That is true. We are starting to get to these middle rounds. I think the first 4 rounds go pretty chalk, and going by ADP, I mean, you want to reach a little bit here or there, you can, but now we're going to start to get to the point where if somebody wants to reach on a guy 1 round later in ADP, because everybody's going to have their own rankings, I don't blame you. But you bring up a good point. We talked earlier in the stream about Williams and Drake May kind of being a little bit more of the riskier picks, having that potential to move up into the top 5 or top 6 quarterbacks, but also having a potential to kind of take a step back. There are 2 quarterbacks people are really excited to see next year, and do they take that next step? But Jordan Love feels very safe, feels like he's kind of cemented himself in that position as a top 15 quarterback, and that's right where you're taking him. And I think the only other quarterback I'd consider here is Trevor Lawrence, and then you're really starting to get into a tier break. I would have after that, Penix, Goff, even JJ McCarthy and Dak in a tier of their own. So I really like that pick. I think that's a nice, safe pick. And yeah, with that, Steve, you're back on the clock at 5:02. So you have Gibbs, Neighbors, and then your quarterback are Drake May and Jordan Love. So what are you thinking here at 5:02?
Yeah, again, this is another spot where I'd look to trade back if I was in a draft. I mean, it's tough here. There's so many quarterbacks that are on the board. I would never take a 3rd one this early. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like it's a bit of a reach. I think his ADP is a little bit higher than I would expect it to be, but with the age factor and again with the potential, especially with now Ben Johnson being there in that offense and hopefully Caleb Williams taking that next step, that offensive line being improved, I'm going to go ahead and take my guy who I've taken in a lot of drafts last year. I'm going to take Rome Odunze. I think he has a ton of upside. I think DJ Moore could be off the team as early as next year. They didn't bring back Keenan. I know they added Luther Burden. I think he plays a different role than Odunze does. I could see Odunze filling that JMO role that Ben Johnson had in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm good reaching, in quotes, reaching for Odunze there. But I think with the age and the upside, I'm confident taking him there.
Yeah, he really fits your team structure where you have him so far. A lot of younger guys with potential, but still with a lot of talent. Romo Dunes, if you're listening to this stream and you're playing Dynasty, you've definitely heard about the Chicago Bears offense. They just have so many mouths to feed. So who does take the next step in that offense? And I just looked at DJ Moore. He's 28 years old. Is he even on this team next year? who gets the Amon-Ra, St. Brown role, who gets the Jameson Williams role. A lot of mouths to feed, but a lot of potential and a really high-powered offense. And I think with the other wide receivers on the board, as we're looking here, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, Worthy, we're starting to get into that heavy wide receiver 2 tier. So at this point, once again, as I mentioned earlier, it really is just pick your guy. If you wanted to go down, 20 spots in the rankings or 15 spots to get the guy that you think is going to take the next step, no one's going to think twice about it. Right after Rome, we have CMC going at 503, Jacobs at 504, and Chase Brown at 505. Team 8 has 3 running backs. To each their own. Not going to argue against that. But with myself on the clock at 506, I have Mahomes in the first, Brian Thomas Jr. in the second, Marvin Harrison, and Kyler Murray with the Cardinals stack in rounds 3 and 4. So on the clock at 506, if I'm looking at sleeper ADP, I got about 6 or 7 quarterbacks here. I'm unlikely to take them at this spot to grab my quarterback 3. If there's a guy at 607 that I like, I'm not gonna think too hard about it. I think taking 3 quarterbacks in a super flex draft is okay. Do I go ahead and I get get a running back here? Do I go another wide receiver? Too early to take a tight end. This is tough. I'm gonna go in a tight end premium league. I would start to consider a tight end here because I do think there is a solid tier break after Hawkinson, Warren, and Loveland just because of the age. I don't love any of the running backs here. We're in that gap where there's a lot of the older guys. You could go one of the rookies in Johnson or Harvey, depending upon your team structure. I'm going to see how this is going to play out for me in a mock draft. And I'm going to go a tight end here. So once again, this is a half PPR tight end premium league where wide receivers and running backs get half a point per reception, and tight ends are going to get a full point. Between Hawkinson, Warren, and Loveland, check the age. Hawkinson at 27. I think my team structure is going to be better off in one of these rookies, and it's really a toss-up between Loveland and Warren. I'm just going to go ahead and take Tyler Warren and keep this moving along. I think he is someone that's going to fill a need in the Indianapolis Colts offense. He's going to get peppered with targets. I discussed this on an earlier stream where I think it's likely that Warren gets more targets in year 1, but the potential for more touchdowns is maybe on Loveland. And we'll see where it balances out a year from now. But to keep this thing moving along, after the Warren pick at 506, we had Devonta Smith at 507, Kenneth Walker at 508. Team 5, once again, has yet to take a wide receiver. Team 4 took Olave at 509. They have 4 wide receivers in the first round, so definitely a bit of a disparity there. Kyle, you're on the clock here at 5'10". You and I have followed very similar structures. Quarterbacks in the rounds 1 and 4, wide receivers around 2 and 3. You're on the clock here at 5'10". What are you thinking, and what do you think about even just these last, 8 or 9 picks?
Well, I guess one thing I will say, the sleeper mock drafts, more realistically, there's going to be more quarterbacks that are taken at this point. So I wouldn't necessarily expect all those quarterbacks that are at the top of the board to still be there in an actual draft. Because more people are going to prioritize taking that second quarterback at this point. So realistically, some of the guys that have just been taken, you might have a shot at. And I'm a little disappointed Olave went the pick before me, to be honest with you. Olave is still only 24. You'd think he's older because he's been around for a bit. But he's still only 24, and he is great when he's healthy. So you're taking a bit of a gamble on the health. The concussion issues are a big problem with him. But he's the alpha number 1 in that offense when he's healthy. Doesn't really matter what quarterback I think's there. Plus, I mean, they might not have a good quarterback this year, but the Saints are going to be a terrible football team this season. So they're going to get a top quarterback in a very good quarterback class next year. So I'd be kind of looking to invest in Olave there because the rest of my team is all under the age of 25. So I'm not super worried about taking maybe a bit of a gamble this season for the upside the next year. That being said, Xavier Worthy, I'm a little concerned about Worthy. I think he had a lot of design catches that Rashee Rice is going to be the one catching the ball from Mahomes this year. I kind of interested in Zay Flowers. Now I know Saps has Zay Flowers in a few leagues, and what's your thoughts on the Zay Flowers experience?
I don't mind him at this spot. I think he is the definition of boom or bust. I think he's the perfect wide receiver 4 on a championship winning team.
Mm-hmm.
If he's your wide receiver 3, I mean, if you had Lamar, I'd be good with it. I agree with the Olave take. I wish he could turn injuries off in the real world because he is such a fun player to watch. But those concussions are real. I don't hate Zay here. I think he's the best wide receiver of the bunch. I agree with the Worthy take. I think Rashee Rice is going to be a 150 target machine this year for Patrick Mahomes. So Worthy will very much be in that boomer bust territory. Except that Zay is the clear-cut number 1 in his offense, wide receiver-wise. So I'd be okay with it at this point.
I feel like the thing holding back Zay Flowers are the touchdowns, where just looking at his stats, I mean, he had over 1,000 yards. He had more targets than T. Higgins. I think he had equal or more receptions than T. Higgins, but only 4 touchdowns last year and only 5 touchdowns the year before. That's really going to limit his upside. Still is yet to have a top 24 finish, but he does seem to be the clear wide receiver 1 in that offense. Now we see the number 1 target competing with Mark Andrews. Does Lamar Jackson throw for 40 touchdowns like he did last year? Does he end up rushing more like what we've traditionally seen? But even the Chris Olave part that you mentioned, you're running out of guys who are the clear number 1 targets on their team. And if you can get those guys still here in the 5th and 6th round, that's what you want to get. You don't want to limit your upside to be taking a clear wide receiver 2 or a wide receiver 3 in their offense.
Right. Again, there's nothing really on the board unless you really want to hop in and take the risk with the running backs that are rookies. You're taking like a Terry McLaurin who's pushing 30 at this point in his career. Ibuka, he's behind Evans and Godwin this year.
Mm-hmm.
There's upside there for sure, but you're pretty much punting this season probably for the most part. With him, DJ Moore again pushing 30. It's a big risk to take him there. I think Jordan Addison would be the other guy to consider here, just because that offense, he's more of a touchdown guy, but he's a big deep threat guy. And I kind of liked your tight end pick, and I think I have a pick in a few. I have another pick in a few spots here, and I probably will look at tight end. But for here, I'm going to take Zay Flowers.
See how that pays off for you. See if any of the tight ends go before. They do not. The wide receivers that go are pretty chalk. So after Zay Flowers went at 5'10", we had Addison, Worthy, and DJ Moore at the turn, and then Ibuka at 6:02. So Kyle, you're back on the clock at 6:03. Yeah, just keep the conversation going. What are you thinking?
Again, I think you're either going to go Caleb Johnson or RJ Harvey as younger RB1s in their offense. I'm not really too concerned about Jaylen Warren. I think he's more of that third down guy. None of the other running backs on the board are of any intrigue really at all. They're all older or risky, I think, in the case of a mix-in, Pacheco. I mean, who knows what you're going to get from Pacheco this season. I think he's a value if he returns to being the number 1 guy in KC, but can you trust that at all after the playoffs this year? I still think there's some interesting tight ends, but Colson Loveland is very interesting at this spot. And I think RJ Harvey would be the other guy. I think it's between those two for me. I don't have a running back yet, and I think there is a bit of a gap after Harvey and Caleb, so I'm going to actually lean Harvey here. He is a little bit older than Caleb, but I think he has the higher rushing. He'll get more carries than Caleb Johnson will, and he's in a much better offense with Sean Payton as the coach. Bo Nix, good quarterback, but he didn't really rush for as many touchdowns as you would think as a rushing quarterback. I think, especially with Kamara being the running back with Sean Payton, I think you can trust Harvey there.
Yeah, I've brought up the Harvey versus Johnson discussion on multiple streams, and the big thing is that 3 year age gap. And a lot of people have Harvey ranked above, especially in redraft rankings. But when it comes to Dynasty, it's definitely kind of pick your poison. I was really hoping Caleb Johnson was going to fall to me at 607. He got taken one pick before, so I'm going to have to take a couple of seconds here and think about this pick. Do I want to invest in a third quarterback? There's still some pretty decent names on the board. I'd probably lean Trevor Lawrence or JJ McCarthy for that upside here at 607. But Kyle went Harvey at 603, Henry at 604 goes after, Terry McLaurin at 605, and once again Caleb Johnson at 606. I think let's get through round 7. Let's see what time it is when we get through round 7, and then if we maybe want to do round 8, we'll go from there. Thank you for everybody if you're listening and following along. So being on the clock at 607, once again, 2 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end. I've yet to take a running back. We just had the long discussion about Harvey versus Johnson. Very little guys left on the board that you feel happy about. The only one with maybe some youth would be Chuba Hubbard. Do you want to invest in Cam Scatterbo for New York? It feels like a bit of a reach at this point. Unlikely that I'm going 2 tight ends. Jalen Waddle's an interesting pick. I think he's someone that everybody's kind of waiting to emerge and take that next step. He's actually ranked almost back-to-back with his partner in Tyreek Hill simply because of the age there. So I would probably be leaning Jalen Waddle, Chuba Hubbard, or one of these quarterbacks. I don't think I'm going to take a third quarterback this early, and I'd like at least one running back that I feel is likely to have the job going into next year. Chuba Hubbard finishes the running back 14. If it didn't, they really didn't bring in a lot of competition. And Trevor Etienne, I don't really feel confident in Rico Dowdle. I think Hubbard's a much better running back than Dowdle. Jonathan Brooks is already likely to miss the entire season. Who knows what he's going to look like in 2026. So I'm going to play it a little safe, although taking the running back's not always the safest pick. But Chuba Hubbard at 607, lock up kind of my RB1. Ooh, so 2 tight ends go after that. Colson Loveland at 608, George Kittle at 609, Tyreek Hill at 610 gets taken above Jalen Waddle. So Saps, you're on the board at 611, 2 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, and a running back. You would still have TJ Hawkinson available in the tight end premium league. We just talked about Jalen Waddle and some of these quarterbacks. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I was really hoping for Loveland to fall to me. That's tough. I think, like Kyle mentioned earlier, I think in a real startup, a lot of these players would still be available at this point. I mean, if you look at the board, we are the only 3 teams who have taken 2 quarterbacks. Every other team, every other CPU has only taken 1 at this
point. That's right.
So I definitely think there would be some better players available in the normal draft at this point. But again, if you're going for upside, I mean, there's 2 ways you could think about it. I mean, taking a third quarterback here, there's a lot of good quarterbacks that are available because of what I just mentioned, us being the only 3 teams to take 2. You could take one and during the season or post-draft, trade him for another player who probably went higher than this pick anyway. Mm-hmm. But for purpose of just taking the pick, I like Waddle. Tyreek is older. I mean, I think both of their ADPs took a hit because of Tua's health and his availability. I think taking a wide receiver who put up, 1,300 yards just 2 years ago, 1,000 yards every year except for last. I'm between Waddle and Pickens, and
okay.
I think Pickens with his character issues, I mean, he is going into a contract year. I could see him for redraft having going a lot higher than here. I think actually I'm going to lean George Pickens. I think he has the better quarterback play. I expect Dak to have a good bounce back year. I kind of was hoping that TJ Hawkinson would not go next because I would have taken him here, but
that's the risk.
Yeah, so again, I'm going to go upside, and I'm going to go with a guy who is the clear-cut number 1 in his offense. Yeah, I'm going to go DK Metcalf on this pick too.
Okay.
I think he could easily eclipse another 150 targets this year. No competition. I trust in his ability. He's a huge target, huge catch radius. I don't think it matters who's going to be throwing the ball. They're going to be looking his way every single time. Caleb Johnson will definitely help a little bit. Warren will take a little bit of the pressure off. I think Freiermuth is still a viable option in a normal, real NFL offense. So I'm going to go DK there. Not feeling too great about it, though, to be quite honest.
You're getting to that part of the draft where you don't really feel great about any of these picks. You kind of have to justify it in your own head, and I could see it either way. I mean, even comparing, Metcalf to Ayuk, Metcalf to Jaden Reed, yeah, I could see it a million ways. So you have 4 wide receivers, really good, just balance across the board. A lot of still guys with a lot of years of potential left. I think Metcalf's by far your oldest player. He is even 3 years older than Pickens, but he has the potential even in the Pittsburgh offense to be around there for a few years. I believe he just signed, a 5-year extension this offseason, and absolutely zero competition for targets. So it looks like you're punting the tight end position, but that's okay. I think all the top tier guys are gone. So at this point, it doesn't hurt to maybe wait a little bit, to get a Njoku, a Kraft, or a Ferguson, even a Kyle Pitts a little bit later. Jaden Reed goes off the board next at 7:03, Mike Evans at 7:04, Brandon Ayuk at 7:05, and I'm back on the clock at 7:06. We keep mentioning that if this was a real draft, it's unlikely that we would have these 8 or 9 quarterbacks here on the sleeper ADP. Most, as Steve mentioned, we're the only teams who have taken 2 quarterbacks so far. So if this was how my board was falling, I would absolutely take one of these quarterbacks. I keep mentioning probably Trevor Lawrence. What's that?
Value-wise, you'd have to take these quarterbacks.
Yeah.
There's no.
I'm almost thinking I just might just to prove a point. Maybe it'll wake up these computers a little bit because a lot of the running backs are a lot older. If you want to invest in a guy who may only have 1 or 2 years left and compete right away, some of these guys at the top of the board make a lot of sense. Otherwise, you're looking at Cam Scatterbo. Even James Conner just signed a 2-year extension. Maybe you could pair him up with Trey Benson, but I already have 2 Cardinals players, so I'd pass on that. I already got my tight end, so in a tight end premium league, I'm going to pass on that. Wide receivers, I do like some of these names. Jameson Williams is somebody that I'd be really excited for. Jerry Jeudy being the clear number 1 target in Cleveland, and then even some of these rookies. Matthew Golden, I actually think a lot of people are down on, but I'm personally pretty high on. In the Packers offense, but if I were to treat this like a real draft, I'm just going to go ahead and take my quarterback 3. Won't be a starter, but I think the value is too good to pass up. So I'm between Trevor Lawrence and J.J. McCarthy. I'm going to go J.J. I think this is a guy that I've been really high on this offseason as, once again, the value this time next year. I think it's very likely McCarthy could be a top 3 startup pick. He could be right up there with Herbert, Nix, CJ Stroud. The Kevin O'Connell offense is one of the best offenses in the league. He's yet to really prove himself. He looked good in preseason, but everybody looks good in preseason. And just like the San Francisco offense, they can make any quarterback look really good. So I think the value is there, and that's what you want to do in a startup pick. You really want to target value at those draft positions. Jameson Williams goes at 7:07, then a couple of running backs, 7:08, and David Montgomery, 7:09. Kyle, you're on the clock here at 7:10. Why don't we get through this pick, and then we'll get through the 8th round. So we'll finish up the 8th round pick, go bring it back over to Steve, and we'll wrap up there. But what are you thinking here at 7:10? 2 quarterbacks, 1 running back, and 3 wide receivers. I'm the only one of the 3 of us to have taken a tight end so far. Would you even consider a Dalton Kincaid or a Mark Andrews this early, or do you feel like they're all kind of a similar tier?
I think at this point, now that you've already punted on those top tier guys, you might as well just keep punting down the line, because I don't think any of them really stick out to me. At this point, I'd probably want to pair a younger, riskier tight end that you take way later in the draft with a more established veteran. I'd take maybe an Evan Ingram in a few rounds, or even a Kelsey, just to have a guy for year 1, maybe another year after that. And then hopefully you get a younger guy, or you draft someone in the rookie draft that will take up. If you were going to take one guy right now, I'd probably lean in the Njoku and Kincaid side of things. I think Njoku still relatively young, probably 27, 28 now. but he might even be the number one option in that offense for the rookie quarterback. So I would definitely lead Njoku if I had to take one. Following suit with you, I think if this was your board, you almost have to take a quarterback. But I think another thing to recognize is you have to know your league. If you don't know anyone in your league, then taking a third quarterback this high probably isn't great if he's just going to sit on your bench. You almost want to trade him to another team. And if you don't know anyone or you don't know the activity level of the people in your leagues, that can be a bit of a risk, taking a third quarterback knowing that you kind of want to trade that third quarterback. But for the sake of this, I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence. I think he's the top quarterback on the board and the best value at that point.
Makes a lot of sense. Once again, we just talk about value. You bring up a good point. If you feel like your league is going to be active and you're going to be able to trade, I think it's a great pick. If you feel like you're in a dynasty league and no one's going to be very active, I'd recommend finding a new dynasty league to join. But otherwise, no, I think in startup picks, you want a guy whose value at that position, who this time next year is going to be a 4th round pick, a 3rd round pick. That's absolutely what you want to target. So after you take Lawrence at 7-10, Matthew Golden goes at 7-11, Dalton Kincaid at the turn at 7-12 with Joe Mixon at 8-01. Josh Downs goes 8:02, so you're back on the clock at 8:03. This is going to be your last pick of this mock startup draft. What are you thinking? So you got 3 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers, 1 running back. Talking through it.
So at running back, I think you could go with an older guy. It depends on how you're trying to build your team. The thing is, if you take a Brian Robinson, if you take a James Conner, if you take an Alvin Kamara, or even a Travis Etienne, any of those guys, you're probably going to be losing value next year. You're almost not going to be gaining value, almost definitively. I think Pacheco is interesting if you're willing to take that plunge. And do you think he's going to get back the RB1 carries for the KC Chiefs? It's a risk. I'm probably going to pass on that. I think there's still some pretty good wide receiver value at this point. And I prefer to build wide receiver out because, A, you're going to probably have a 3 wide receiver starting spots and then at least 1 or 2 flexes, and you might only have 2 running back that you have to start. And that's kind of how I like to build my team. Especially half-point PPR, you're still getting that benefit as a wide receiver, getting those points per catch. So at the top of the board, you got Judy, you got Higgins and Burden to me seem like big reaches at this point. I'm kind of looking at Pearsall. I have Brock Purdy as my quarterback. Ayuk's coming off the ACL. Kittle's in his 30s already. I think I'm taking Pearsall here.
No, that's a great pick. He was somebody that I would have been eyeing here at the 807. I was looking at the age gaps between some of these guys, like Chris Godwin being 29 years old, coming off the injury, although he did just sign the extension. What does this team look like even halfway through this year? Then bringing in Egbuka as kind of the next man up feels like Godwin would be tough to invest in. So I like the Pearsall pick. I like stacking him with Brock Purdy. He's someone that, once again, could also be considered a buy low this offseason, especially with the Ayuk injury, Debo walking out the door. So I love that pick there at 803. Burden goes 804, Judy 805, Pacheco 806, and I'm back on the clock at 807. This will be my last pick of this mock startup draft. Dang, this is really tough. We were just talking about these running backs. I would probably punt the position again. I like some of these guys here a little bit later on as my RB2. I mean, even Najee Harris and Tony Pollard. If I go down after that, there's maybe a bit of a tier break. Do you want to invest in Aaron Jones? Come back with if you got Aaron Jones, who did they just sign to compete with Aaron Jones? Yeah, where the heck is Jordan Mason?
10. He's way down there.
Dang, yeah, way down there. So maybe that's what you do. You look to pick up like the Minnesota stack of running backs. You can get them in rounds, 9 and 11, where you're guaranteed a start, or at least one of them's going to emerge in a high-powered offense, especially stacking with J.J. McCarthy. I like that approach. So I would punt the running back position at least one more round. I already got my 3 quarterbacks. I already got my tight end wrapped up in the tight end premium league. I'm definitely going to be looking wide receiver here. I only have 2 wide receivers. And Kyle, you started to mention it on your turn that in a dynasty startup, you really want to build around wide receivers. I would probably be going a bit more wide receiver heavier than I am now. But I think the value was just too good to pass up on some of these picks. But wide receivers they have a much longer shelf life. They're much safer picks compared to pretty much all positions, especially compared to running backs and tight ends. So if I'm looking to get my wide receiver 3 here, Cortland Sutton's 29, Devontae Adams 32. Unlikely to go either of those. If I scroll down, Ridley 30. A lot of these guys with high upside, they're just a lot older, which is why they're sliding down in these dynasty drafts. I could see Jaden Higgins, more likely to lead Jaden Higgins over Trey Harris.
What do you think about the Buffalo guys? Keon and
Yeah.
Shakir.
I've been talking about the Buffalo guys a good amount this offseason, and it's really hard to tell. I think everybody wants a piece of that Buffalo offense. As with, once again, we talked about earlier on, or to start this draft, the Josh Allen kind of being the clear 101, one of the most high-powered offenses, one of the teams with the highest over-under win totals. So you want any piece of that offense that you can get. But who's really that guy? Who's going to be the number one? Doesn't seem like a team that's built around an alpha wide receiver. They seem to be following suit with the Kansas City Chiefs of kind of spreading the ball around. It's actually interesting that both the Chiefs wide receivers have been off the board, but we're looking at middle of round 8, and we're really not even close to any of the Buffalo wide receivers going. I'd be more likely to lean Keon Coleman, I think, for the upside, to be able to take that next step. Khalil Shakir feels like the safer pick, but it feels like a very boring pick. If I were to pass on him this round, maybe grabbing Shakir in the 9th or the 10th is your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. But Keon Coleman feels like a guy next year who could easily take a step back just as much as he could easily take a step forward, where Shakir just feels very solidified in that role. They just invested a lot of money in him. I'm going to keep us going. I'm going to lean Jaden Higgins over Trey Harris. We talked a lot this offseason, kind of those middle of round 2 rookie draft guys between like Higgins, Harris, and Besh. Their potential for, in the offense, Harris has the potential to be the number 1. Higgins is kind of slotted in behind Nico, but in a very pass-happy offense with CJ Stroud. I think a lot of people are excited about. He feels like someone that from day one is going to have that wide receiver 2 role. So just give me that wide receiver 3 on my team who I know is going to be a starter and get 70 to 80% of the snaps from day one. Brian Robinson goes 808, Travis Etienne 809, Alvin Kamara 810. Steve, you're on the clock here at 811 with the last pick of the startup draft. Kind of talk me through how you think this last round has gone, and also, as Kyle mentioned, what do you think about those Buffalo wide receivers? I mean, although you got 4 wide receivers here, would you, even in my position with Higgins, would you have leaned, say, Coleman or Shakir?
I think I would still follow your thought process on Higgins or Trey Harris over Shakir and Keon. I'm actually pretty high on Trey Harris. I've seen him go pretty high in some rookie drafts. Some people trading even future first just to get him. I would probably lean Trey Harris if I was in your spot, but you really can't go wrong with Jaden Higgins. I mean, another huge wide receiver. They have Nico Collins to take away the top corner matchups. So I definitely think the door for a wide receiver 2 in a high-powered offense is right there for Higgins to take. I like Shakir over Keon. I agree that Keon has probably more runway, but the volatility is huge there. I mean, he could easily put up a terrible year and be completely off fantasy radars by this time next year, while Shakir, I think, is that guaranteed 60, 70 catch guy. I think he could definitely eclipse 1,000 yards this year, although I don't see him getting a lot of touchdowns. I think Josh Allen's going to take those, James Cook is going to take those, and even Dalton Kincaid is going to take those as well. So with this last pick, I would be looking at either tight end or running back. If Kamara was there, he would probably be my top pick for a running back. I still think he has a couple good years left in him. He's another guy that you're going to get 70, 80 catches out of, as he does every single year, in an offense that's going to be playing from behind the entire season, especially with a most likely rookie quarterback back there. Having that safety blanket for Kamara, I think, is huge. again, if this was a real draft, I think taking a quarterback is an absolute no-brainer. The value is insane here, being with the quarterbacks that are available in the mid, the late 8th round. But for the purposes of this draft, I think I'm going to lean tight end, especially because I don't have one yet. There's a couple that are in this tier. I mean, Mark Andrews with the age factor, I think I'm going to stay away from him. Kyle Pitts, I've drank the Kool-Aid on Kyle Pitts the last 3 years. I can't do it anymore. I hope he's good. I hope he has a good year, but I'm not buying him in any way, shape, or form this year. Njoku, again, with the age factor, the injury risks, and the quarterback question marks there, I'm leaning away from him. So I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft, especially being that I got Jordan Love a little bit earlier. I think his ADP is pretty low. I mean, I know that they have a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, but the performances that he put on last year, I mean, there was a stretch where he was a top 8 tight end in Dynasty, in redraft just for the season last year. He had 700 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. I think that's probably his, I wouldn't say floor, but I think that he could easily eclipse those numbers this year. He's a huge target, 6'5", 260. He moves pretty well for that size, that size too. So I'm good taking Tucker Kraft here, especially being a tight end premium league late in the 8th round. I think the value is pretty good there.
Yeah, I think based upon just age, I was just looking at him, but I completely skipped over his age. Only being 24 years old in an offense that's we'd like to think is pretty high powered, getting the stack with Jordan Love. And if you're considering age over Andrews and Njoku, you could possibly lean Pitts or Ferguson. You just talked that out a bit about why you're avoiding Kyle Pitts. He kind of seems to be a love-hate in a lot of relationships. So, and then after that, you do hit another tier break. Do you want to invest in Jonnu Smith doing the same thing last year that he's going to do next year? Does Ingram become the joker in the Denver Broncos offense? Freiermuth, Kate Otten. After that, you're just a lot of guys you don't have a lot of confidence in. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'll go ahead and close this out. You guys go ahead and stay on the stream here for just a couple more minutes, and I'll talk to you after. But just really want to appreciate you guys for coming in. So once again, this was a 12-team half-PPR tight end premium mock draft. We talked about a lot of differences that you would traditionally see in your leagues where we're going into the 9th round and no computer has taken more than 2 quarterbacks. That's why we had a lot of really good value with McCarthy and Lawrence in the 7th. And Steve, I think you would have probably considered a quarterback there in the 8th or even here at the 9th with these guys that are on the board. But unlikely you would see that in your own draft, but otherwise I think this was pretty chalk. I think this went about how I would expect a lot of your leagues to go. We talked through a lot of the things we love and we hate about each of these guys. So if you're just tuning in, I would recommend going back and listening to this episode. It was great having you guys on, and this was a really fun kind of constructive experiment. We're definitely approaching startup draft season. So once again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and I'm going to go ahead